Welcome to Record-ology.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. I never thought this day would come. I really didn't. I had no intention of getting into 8-track, but you guys have been persistent. For years you've been saying, when are you getting into 8-track? When are you getting into 8-track? And I wasn't strongly driven to do so because I didn't have a personal memory of it. As a kid, my dad in his 67 Camaro had like a Spark-O-Matic cheapo 8-track player. But, it was never a format we had in the home. We had, records, we had audio cassette tapes, a Philips compact cassette, and even a reel-to-reel growing up. But that's it. We didn't have the 8-track. So it's not something that I was super familiar with. And in general, I wasn't impressed with the form factor, and I just associated with muddy, worn out, kind of yellowing plastic cartridges. It just wasn't interesting to me until now. So I happened to pick up this guy right here. This is a Soundesign 8-track player, and I picked it up for $10, and it works perfectly, by the way. I tested it out, and everything's working perfectly. And we're going to do a sound demonstration on that in a minute. But I wanted to talk about 8-track. For those of you that, by the way, these are my 2 8-tracks. I went out today and I bought these for $1 each. Out here in Colorado, at least, almost every 8-track is country and western. So to find, big band, or in this case, Broadway, it's kind of a tricky thing. So I'm hoping to come across more, but for now, that's what I've got. Let's do a little background on 8-track. So, the first cartridge tape system was the RCA tape cartridge system, at least the first mainstream one. People liked cartridges because they allowed them to play tape which was considered to be superior quality-wise to a vinyl record, and but they didn't like to handle the tape. And a threading of a tape through a reel-to-reel was considered cumbersome, not child-friendly, and so cartridges was something that people wanted. And what happened was an interesting chain of events resulted in the existence of the Stereo 8 cartridge, or as is more commonly known, the 8-track tape. And I'm going to explain to you how it works, all that good stuff, but a little bit of history first, so sit tight and let's dive into the history. So what ended up happening, by the way, these were invented in 1964, led by a consortium, group of companies and interested individuals, led by Bill Lear of Learjet. But the people in the group is what's really interesting. In that group consisted of Ampex, Ford, General Motors. Why car companies? Well, guess what? This is perfectly suited, unlike a vinyl record, to play music in your car, as well as Motorola and RCA Victor. Now, taking a step back, there were other tape cartridges similar to this, starting with the Fidela Pack, which was invented in 1953 by George Eash. And those Fidela Packs lived a much longer life than the Stereo 8 or the 8-track did. In fact, they made it all the way into the early 90s, and kind of like Beta, where it went into professional broadcast, for decades after its, consumer usage. But the Fidela Pack was used in broadcast for, jingles and commercials into the early 90s. So George Eash invented the Fidela Pack, and then Earl Madman Muntz invented the 4-track Stereo Pack, which is similar to this, although it didn't have, unlike this, which you can see has the pinch roller right in the device. It didn't have that built into the device, and it also had some tape tensioning stuff. So Bill Lear got these people together and said, what can we do? And one of the guys working for Bill Lear was a guy by the name of Richard Krause. So Richard Krause is actually the one that invented this format, designed it based on all the input from the group. And it made some improvements. So it doubled the number of tracks. So you may be saying 8 tracks. What does that mean? So basically, it's got 4 programs. Well, those programs are stereo. So stereo requires 2 tracks. So 4 times 2 is 8. So basically on the head, instead of the heads being, or the record heads being right next to each other like that, they're spaced apart. And so they skip down the tape. And on the tape, which is usually about a 10-minute loop, there are a number of songs And then the splice on that tape, because it is endless loop, is a piece of metal which triggers a solenoid, and that solenoid sends the head down to the next stereo track. So 8 tracks in total, which is 4 stereo tracks, if that makes any sense. And that's why you see 4 tracks right here, 4 programs here, and you just select it manually like that, or when the foil is reached, the solenoid will send it to the next track. There's no rewind. Very few players had fast forward because that was very hard on the system. You couldn't rewind. It's a single direction. So basically what you've got going on is you've got, and here's a look inside one of the tapes itself. Just like reel-to-reel, just like compact cassette, it's capstan driven. So the tension is created between the pinch roller, which is built into the tape, and the capstan. And the tape is held taut with that. There is some sponge up there, which is good to have some depth to that sponge so that it can help with that tension. But it's really the process of the pinch roller and the capstan tensioning that tape. And it pulls the tape out of the inner side of the spool and then feeds it back around the outside. The spool there is passive. It's not driven. There's nothing there. It's just free spinning. All of the movement is done with that capstan and pinch roller. And then it feeds it back to the outside of the tape. So as you can see, you can't reverse. You can't rewind. That wouldn't make any sense. Also, these experience changes in their linear velocity. The tape does. So the tape that's around the middle part of the spool, just like a record, is spinning slower than the tape that's fed to the outside of the spool. So what that means is slowly, as the tape works its way to the center of the spool, it actually has to slide on itself. So the back of the tape is coated with a special graphite coating that allows it to slip effectively without damaging it. So as you can see, the tape goes through a lot in the process. So that's pretty much all there is to it. It's an interesting format, but again, not one that I've been particularly aware of. Okay, so this player right here, 1970, mid-70s or so. I talked a little bit about it the other day. Yeah, it's pretty simple. There's not much to it. Looking around back here, sorry I'm filming at night again. It's just been busy. You see a couple of, an input and an output. So there's a phono input, meaning that you connect a record player to it. Somebody told me these are better suited for ceramic cartridges, so connect a record player to it. And then that's a speaker output. Originally this was sold with a set of speakers, so even though those are RCA connections, it's not a line output, so it's something to keep in mind. I have heard that you can add resistors to the other side of these and turn them into line outputs, but that's above my pay grade. So what we're going to do is the easy way out. We're going to use the headphone output, which is controlled with this volume. So what I've done is I've just taken a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch adapter and then a simple 1/8 inch cable, which I've plugged into my handy dandy speaker. I'm going to turn that on.
Ready to pair.
Now what's interesting about this, you'll see there's no play, stop, no fast forward. Only control you have is the volume. There is a tone control, treble up top, bass on bottom, a balance control because it is stereo, although with this single speaker it's going to be mono. So all you have to do is stick the tape in and the music starts happening. I mean, it's pretty, helps if you turn it on. I mean, it's literally all there is to it. Music starts automatically. You can manually switch. You can see the lit up number there. Switch between programs. And then when you're done, you rip the tape out, which feels so wrong. It feels so wrong to do that. There's no eject mechanism. You just, rip that thing right out of the machine. It's designed to play that way or to work that way. Really bizarre. So like I was saying before, the metal foil sensor that triggers that solenoid you can switch between programs anytime you want with the selector switch. But if you were to let it play through, then you would have to wait for that solenoid. So some downsides to this format, it actually is predated by the compact cassette. The compact cassette came out a year earlier than this did, 1963, led by a consortium of folks that was put together from Philips and other folks. But as you know, if you've heard, the compact cassette was a low quality when it came to music. It wasn't really suitable for audio. It ran at half the speed of this tape. tape was half the width too. This is 1/4 inch tape, just like a reel-to-reel, where a compact cassette has 1/8 inch tape. So an 1/8 inch tape running at half the speed of this runs at 3.75 inches per second, sort of the higher of the two, and it's kind of a mid-grade setting on reel-to-reel tape players, which run at double that for the best. When it comes to magnetic media, the more the better. So the faster the tape speed, the better. And what happened was, over time, the compact cassette's development outpaced the 8-track. So the 8-track tape sounded better at first than the compact cassette, and then the compact cassette caught up with better formulation and sort of that format, and the players developing and evolving past this. So early 60s, 64 this started. It had its absolute height in 1978, and then by the early 80s, 82, 83, it was old news. Everybody was on to compact cassette and compact disc, but primarily compact cassette for the next decade or so. Although you could still buy albums on this format into the 1987, which kind of surprises me, but kind of interesting. All right, let's listen to a little. I love the blue on this one. I hope to get some more tapes. So volume control. It's got a little bit of noise. Probably use the deoxit, but it's really not bad. Treble, bass. Sounds good right in the middle there. Obviously the balance isn't going to make a difference right now because we're listening to a mono speaker. And again, the backlit program selector. I think that's so cool.
Feather and Tommy.
Sounds good to me. Sounds really good. I think it's super cool. I think it's a fun format. I'm excited because this is something new. I've been doing nothing but, not nothing but, primarily records for the last 3-4 years. It's kind of exciting, and it's fun to find something that's, affordable to get into too, because these don't cost a whole lot of money, right? $1 a piece. Sometimes people try to charge like $12. I wouldn't pay that for it. Also, something I was told is that some of the cartridges, specifically the white RCA ones, I guess are glued together. So if you do need to get in there and do work, if the tape snaps and it gets sucked inside, this one uses, instead of sponges, uses a pressure pad. But anyway, these are harder because they're glued, the RCA Victor ones, whereas some of the other ones have screws and you can get in there and work on them. So there are subtle differences in brands and whatnot. And I hope to do more on this channel and just, in life. I hope to do more on 8-track because it's interesting. It's something new, and I was thankful to pick up this unit in such good condition. And I really want to give it a good, thorough listen and experiment with it. Here's a little peek behind the scenes as I was getting it all cleaned up, checking the belt, all that good stuff, prior to making today's video. Okay, I took the screws off the Masonite back panel, and looking inside, things seem to be pretty dang clean, actually. You can't just take the lid off this top or bottom. It's in a wooden box with no lid, except for the front and back. So look at that monster capacitor in there. You can see the back, those 4 wires go over to those LEDs on the front. One of them's on the top right, you can kind of see that. Everything looks super clean. There's nothing living in here, which I was thankful for. I think the belt is under the player itself, so I just can't quite see it from here to verify that it's working. Looking inside, things look to be in pretty good. I haven't cleaned the head yet. As you can tell, it's still kind of smeary. There's a motor on the left there. It's dusty. Needs some cleaning, but overall, it looks like it's in good condition. So hopefully, I'll be able to get it working. Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me for the angle here, but what you're seeing is the pulley and the belt. I'm gonna move the camera over a little bit to the right. So you can see there that the belt looks to be in good condition, but it's under this plate, I can't even see it to the eye. I'm looking through the camera lens, but the belt's intact, so which is good, and everything looks clean. So just kind of pull this out. So that was like under that plate. So I'm glad the belt's in good condition. Anyway, that's going to do it for now, guys. That's a little bit of history on the 8-track tape, the stereo 8 tape, and a little history behind the scenes. Hopefully it wasn't too much detail. Hopefully it was interesting. Tell me down below, anything that I missed or anything you'd like to add. Also, give me some suggestions. If you guys feel led to send me 8-track tapes or records, you're always encouraged to do so. Just mail them to our post office box, and we will definitely get on the show, give you a massive shout out, the address for which is in the About tab. But yeah, that's going to do it for today, guys. Happy record hunting, happy tape hunting. We will see you tomorrow.